I've walked where the floor whispers rot. I have sat in the circle where men do not speak until the silence begins to scream. I have stood at the threshold, lungs full of nails, voice caught like a moth in the throat's dim attic. I've seen the tremble behind their eyes, not tears, not yet, but the glint of them pressing against the dam of a jaw too used to clenching. The chairs groan, the walls sweat, the clock ticks like bone on bone. This is where they come when the bottle's voice grows louder than the baby's, louder than the heartbeat, louder than the scream in the shed where the belt still hangs. This is where they come when the night tastes like pennies and the blade calls them by a childhood nickname. This is where they come with hands that tremble like dogs taught not to beg, with names they no longer answer to, with memories coiled in the corners of their lungs like barbed wire soaked in lullabies. They do not speak at first. They count the stains on the ceiling. They listen to the radiator moan like it's mourning someone who drowned in hot water. Each voice breaks differently. Some like glass, some like gravel. One like a man dragging his own coffin through a playground at dusk. They say, I almost didn't come. They say, I was fine until the garage light wouldn't turn off. They say, I held the pill like a prayer and it started to dissolve. They say, please, just tell me I'm not the only one. And something opens. Not a door, not a window. Something in the ribcage. Something made of ash and antlers, of fog and fathers, of all the things they weren't allowed to say, so they learn to sing them with fists. They're not here to be saved. They're here to remember how to live with the wound, to unlearn the lullaby that told them real men bleed only when shot. Each word is a rope, each nod a rung. They climb out of the pit, using each other's breath like lanterns. It is not beautiful. It is not clean. It stinks of sweat and cheap chairs, and the stale perfume of fear rehearsed nightly. But it is real. They say, I thought I was the only broken one. They say, I buried 3 friends before I picked up the phone. They say, it was his voice that pulled me back. Just his voice. And still the walls do not fall, but the light gets in, soft as bruise, sharp as a mother's scream the moment before silence. This is not salvation. It is survival. This is not healing. It is choosing to breathe with the knife still in. But this circle, this furnace of grief and grace, this is where the dead begin to remember their names. Behind the lines, this poem doesn't extend a hand, it bares its teeth. It wades into the shadows where men's support groups gather when the light becomes unbearable. It doesn't glorify their pain, nor does it pity it. It traces the slow, grinding cost of silence worn as armor, and what it takes to put it down. This is not the story of strong men made weak. It's the unflinching record of fragile men pretending to be made of iron until rust gives way. It's not about a heroic ascent, but the trembling, reluctant descent into vulnerability, the kind of raw, unsellable brotherhood, forged not in triumph, but in the brutal heat of honesty. What's here is ritual, the shame-swollen walk into the room, the pause before speaking, the way confession claws up the throat like smoke. These are men learning to speak in the aftermath of implosion. Not out of hope, but out of necessity. Not because they believe they'll be understood, but because the alternative is death. The poem walks the razor's edge of desperation. Its repetitions echo the rhythm of relapse, of reaching out and recoiling. The language weeps and claws at once, sometimes soft, sometimes serrated. It's built on consonants that grind like teeth, on syllables that sigh and shudder. The poem's language clashes with discord, mirroring the tension between the will to endure and the urge to vanish. The brotherhood here is not a bond of glory. It's a last rope in the dark. The circle isn't sacred, it's scarred. This isn't camaraderie romanticized, it's survival shared. Grief leaks from every gesture, but so does grace. At its heart, this poem isn't about recovery. It's about the moment before it, the twitch, the breath, the choice not to die today. It holds no illusions, it makes no promises, but it tells the truth, that in the cold, in the quiet, a man's voice can save another from the edge, not by strength, not by answers, just by saying, I'm still here,